Hello, my name is Cleve Evans, and I am here to give a presentation on the history of the Name of the Year vote that American Name Society has been doing every year since 2004. So there we are. This is the history of the Name of the Year selection. Done by myself, Cleveland Ken Evans, Bellevue University. I retired in the end of August, so I'm now a professor emeritus there at that place in Nebraska. The Name of the Year vote was inspired by the American Dialect Society Word of the Year, which was first created in 1990 by Dr. Alan Metcalf. Anyone who's been to an ADS meeting knows that they have a huge amount of fun at their annual vote for the Word of the Year to get a huge amount of positive publicity. Going to a few of those, I decided that ANS should also copy them by having a Name of the Year vote. The Dialect Society has been extremely gracious in allowing us to do that. And when we have met at the same time and place with them, which we usually have, they've announced the Name of the Year at their Word of the Year vote. Because of COVID this year, we aren't meeting together, and the Dialect Society has already met, and their Word of the Year this year is COVID, logically. So 2004 was the first year American Name Society had a Name of the Year vote. At that point, we were actually doing it by mail or email beforehand. There were 4 nominees: Al-Qaeda, Jon Stewart, Nevaeh, which at that point was a very newly popular baby name. It's the word heaven spelled backwards. And Fahrenheit 9/11, the title of the film, which came out that year. Fahrenheit 9/11 won as the overall Name of the Year for its linguistic inventiveness and its clever alteration of Ray Bradbury's novel titled Fahrenheit 451. 2005 nominees were Aiden, at that point a popular baby name; Louis Scooter Libby Jr., again a Washington figure involved in scandal at that point; Scalito, which was a nickname for Antonin Scalia; and Katrina, the name of the hurricane which devastated New Orleans and the Mississippi Gulf Coast that year. The Name of the Year 2005 was Katrina, because it became a by name for disaster, but people thought it was really appropriate for American Name Society to make a hurricane Name of the Year, because George R. Stewart, who was a longtime member and leader in the American Name Society, wrote the 1941 novel Storm, which, although it was about a Pacific non-tropical storm, inspired the idea of naming hurricanes when his storm in that book was called by the meteorologist who was the hero Mariah. It also went on to inspire the Broadway musical song they called The Wind Mariah. 2006 nominees, people who had gotten more into it. You can see we had a whole lot of them. I don't have time to go through them all. I will mention that Beatrice was there because it was the name of a character in the Lemony Snicket books and movies that year's. Most important one was macaca, which was a word which or name which was used by the senator from Virginia at that point, George Allen, to refer to one of his opponent's campaign workers. Many people thought it helped Allen lose the election because it was seen as a racist epithet at that point. But the overall winner that year was Pluto, just by 1 vote over macaca, the name of the dwarf planet, which had just been demoted from planet to dwarf planet that year, and it was very controversial for the general public, though it was much in the news. And the photo, by the way, is from the New Horizons spacecraft. We didn't know what Pluto looked like up close in 2006. We had to wait till 2015 to get beautiful photos of it like that. 2007 is the first time we started voting at our meeting instead of beforehand. Meetings before nominees before the meeting included Lindsay Lohan, Britney Spears, Daughtry, Jersey Boys, Forever Stamps, which at that point the post office had just come up with as a trade name for stamps that will always work for first-class mail, no matter how far in the past you bought them. Google, Carbon Footprint, Addison, a baby name, and Barack Hussein Obama, who at that point was a U.S. senator. But none of those won. It was something nominated from the floor that year, Betrayus, which was a nickname which the conservative radio commentator Rush Limbaugh had originally invented to nastily refer to Chuck Hagel, the Republican senator, who he thought had betrayed some of conservative ideals. But then people on the left took it up to refer to David Petraeus, a general who was leading the Iraq war at that point. So it was considered interesting as a name because it was used in different contexts by both people on the far right and the far left in American politics. In 2008 was the first year we had 4 different categories. So from now on, I won't have time to mention other nominees except the winners of the categories. The fictional name of the year was Edward, who was main character in the Twilight books and films at that point about sparkling vampires. The personal name of the year was Barack Hussein Obama, who of course had just been elected to the presidency. The place name was Wasilla, the town in Alaska that the Republican vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin came from. And the trade name was Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the federal mortgage lending institutions, which were much in the news because of a scandal at that point. Name of the year for 2008 was Barack Hussein Obama, which won not just because he had been elected president, but primarily because his name itself was part of the discussion about him during the election campaign, because of course it was so unusual and showed that his father had come from a Muslim background. Although he himself, of course, was not a Muslim. Category winners in 2009, the fictional name was Max, the name of the boy in Where the Wild Things Are. There was a movie came out that year. It was based on the really, really popular children's books about a little boy dealing with night monsters named Max. The personal name was Chesley Burnett Sully Sullenberger III. Was later a movie starring Tom Hanks made about this man who was an airline pilot who was able to successfully land a disabled airliner in the Hudson River by Manhattan in New York City, saving his passengers. The place name of the year was Salish Sea, which was a designation for a body of water off the coast of Washington State and British Columbia. The trade name of the year was Twitter. Twitter was a fairly new thing back in 2009, but of course was hugely popular very suddenly. Salish Sea won as name of the year. You can see this is a map that was a new designation that geographers and ecologists had come up with for the joint body of water, which is Puget Sound, the Juan de Fuca Strait, and the Strait of Georgia, because it is, especially in terms of its ecology, a single biological area, and it was felt that that was needed to be emphasized by coming up with a new name for the entire body of water. Category winners in 2010, the fictional names of the year was Quinn and Finn, who were 2 characters in the then popular television program Glee. Quinn was female and Finn was male, I believe, and they both were having an impact on what people were naming babies at that point. The personal name of the year was Lady Gaga, the stage name of Stephanie Germanotta, who is perhaps probably even more popular as a singer and songwriter today than she was in 2010. The place name was Eyjafjallajökull, who I know I'm not pronouncing right, the name of the volcano in Iceland. The trade name of the year was Tea Party, which may not sound like a trade name since it was the name of a political group, but at that point, things that were more miscellaneous, we were sticking in trade names because we didn't know where else to put them. Okay, the name of the year overall was Eyjafjallajökull, which won because that volcano was in the news very much that year because of major eruptions, which put out so much ash that it disrupted air travel between Europe and North America. And so news commentators had to try to pronounce this all the time. And of course, most of them probably did no better and probably even worse than I just have trying to pronounce it. The category winners in 2011, the fictional category was Elizabeth Salander from Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Which was a very popular book series and movies at that time. The personal name was Gaddafi, the name of the then dictator of Libya, which was considered remarkable because it had been pointed out how there were so many different ways to transliterate the Arabic spelling of that name into the Roman alphabet. Those three are only of about 20 different forms that different journalistic organizations were using around the world at that point. The place name of the year was Fukushima, the town in Japan, which was the site of a nuclear reactor damaged in an earthquake, which then caused major problems ecologically in Japan. The trade name was Siri. The personified voice thing for Apple phones, and the political event was Arab Spring. Spontaneously, the voters that time decided they wanted a separate category for political events, and then they voted that political event, Arab Spring, the designation for the revolutions that were going on in Arabic-speaking countries in North Africa and the Middle East as the name of the year. Unfortunately, Arab Spring has not led to lasting democratic change, except perhaps in the one country of Tunisia. Category winners in 2012, the fictional name of the year was Downton Abbey. And the personal name of the year was Malala, name of a young girl who had been severely injured by Taliban-like terrorists in Pakistan because she wanted to be educated, which her father supported, and she became a leader of the movement for women's rights in Islamic countries. The place name was Gangnam. There was a popular song that year, Gangnam Style. Gangnam is a district of Seoul, South Korea, which is very wealthy and trendy. And the trade name of the year was Fiscal Cliff, which at that point was much discussed as part of the financial problems going on in our country at that time. But this was one of the two times that the overall name of the year was none of the four category winners. It's possible to nominate something else at the final vote along with the category winners, and it was another hurricane. The second time we got a hurricane, Sandy, which was also sometimes called Superstorm Sandy, as well as Hurricane Sandy. The photograph is of a seaside town in New Jersey devastated by that horrible storm. The category winners in 2013, the fictional was Ender Wiggin, the hero of the book by Orson Scott Card called Ender's Game. There was a movie of that year. The first name of the year was Francis, the name of the newly elected Pope, which was in the news partly because it was the first time a Pope had ever selected that name. Of course, named himself after St. Francis of Assisi. The place name was Syria in the news because of its horrible civil war. coming after the Arab Spring. The trade name was Obamacare, which was a term originally created by people who were opponents of that medical care system. But later, many people who supported it took it up positively. So it was interesting as a name. It was started out negative, and then for many people became positive. Francis won overall name of the year, again, because it was such a new thing for a pope, and because was such a message from that man as to what kind of a papacy he wanted to have. The category winners in 2014 were Elsa, the the chief character of the animated film Frozen. Even since we designated that, I think Elsa has become even more identified as a name with just that one character by most younger people in the United States. Personal name was Malala. Again, Malala Yousafzai was now won the Nobel Prize for Peace that year. So she was in the news again. It's the first time we've had something win the personal name of the year 2 years, 2012 and 2014. The place name of the year was Ferguson, the town in Missouri, which was much in the news for demonstrations resulting from the death of a young black man at the hands of police. And the trade name was Uber, the ride-sharing service, which was newly popular at that time. Name of the year in 2014 was Ferguson because it had become a byword for the entire civil rights protest movement at that point in history. Category winners in 2015, the fictional ones were Ray, Finn, and Poe, three characters from the movie Star Wars: The Force Awakens. The personal name of the year was Caitlyn Jenner. The name of former Bruce Jenner, as she came out as a transgender person and chose Caitlyn as her new name. Denali, the name of Alaskan mountain. The state of Alaska had asked the federal government to change the name of what was Mount McKinley back to Denali, its original Native American name, many years before then, but 2015 was when the Department of Interior finally agreed to do that. And then the trade name was Charlie Hebdo, the name of a French satirical magazine, which was in the news because of a terrorist attack on its offices, because it had satirized some aspects of the Islamic religion. And the name of the year winner was Caitlyn Jenner, chosen partly because of how it emphasized the new prominence of transgender persons in our society. The category winners of 2016, the fictional one was Hamilton, the incredibly popular Broadway musical, where figures from American Revolutionary War history are presented with rap. The personal name was Drumpf, which many people at that point claimed was the original surname of Donald Trump, the newly elected president. The place name was Aleppo, a city in Syria, which was completely devastated by being bombed by the government in the Civil War. The trade name of the year was a tie between Uber, which had already won, and Brexit, the designation for the vote in the United Kingdom where they voted to leave the European Union. That was the only time we've had a tie in a category. The overall name of the year was Aleppo. The photograph, of course, is of some babies being rescued from a hospital which had been bombed that year. The category winners in 2017, the fictional name of the year was Nambia, which really wasn't a fictional name, but was just a mistake Donald Trump made at the United Nations where he talked about the country Nambia in Africa. Of course, he was mistakenly pronouncing the name Namibia, the name of a real country. The personal name of the year was Maria. The third time we've had a hurricane on our list. Maria, of course, was the hurricane which devastated Puerto Rico, and there was much controversy over the federal government's response to that. The place name was Charlottesville, Virginia, which, as an aside, happens to be the town I was born in, but of course was not name of the year because of that, but because of the horrible neo-Nazi demonstrations that resulted in loss of life there. And again, were controversial because of remarks Donald Trump made about them later on. And then the trade name of the year was #MeToo, designation for the new movement where women came out as victims of sexual harassment and on the internet with that hashtag. And this is the second time that the overall name of the year was not one of the category winners. Instead, it was Rohingya, which is the name of an ethnic group in Burma or Myanmar. You know, that country itself has two different names, which it's hard to know which one to call it. But the government of that country was persecuting this Muslim ethnic minority within their country, so that thousands of them had to flee to refugee camps, mostly in Bangladesh. And it was considered really important as a name because part of the persecution of the Myanmar government of this group was to try to suppress their name, to try to say there was no such people with that name. Category winners in 2018, we switched fictional to artistic and literary. The winner that year was Wakanda, which was a country in the Black Panther movies, of course, originally created by Marvel Comics. Miscellaneous was #MeToo, again, something that won twice. Personal name was Jamal Khashoggi, the name of a Saudi Arabian journalist who was murdered in the Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey. The place name was Paradise, the city in California, which was destroyed by wildfires and is considered by many people significant as a name because of the irony of a place with a name like that being destroyed by a literally hellish fire. Trade name of the year was Gritty, the name of the new Philadelphia Flyers mascot. And the overall name of the year was Jamal Khashoggi, which was chosen partly because people sort of learned during the year better how to pronounce it. Originally, most political commentators and journalists in the United States were saying Khashoggi, and it's changed to Khashoggi. People seem to change to try to more give an English pronunciation that more closely approximated the original Arabic pronunciation. Last year, 2019, the artistic and literary winner was Baby Yoda, which was a name which actually was early a name that fans came up with for a character which doesn't have much of a name on the Disney streaming program, The Mandalorian, set in the Star Trek universe. The first time we had the E name as a category, it was #Fridays for Future, designation come up with Greta Thunberg and those who supported her for demonstrations against global warming. The miscellaneous name of the year was anti-vaxxer, term for people who are against vaccinations, largely because they falsely believe they cause diseases such as autism. The personal name of the year was Greta Thunberg, name of the teenager in Sweden who became worldwide famous because of leading a movement against global warming. The place name of the year was Arakath, name of a new dwarf planet that NASA had done a flyby of that year. The trade name of the year was TikTok, the name of a new online platform at that point based in China, which had become hugely popular with young people. And the name of the year was Arakath. Arakath was a designation for that planet, which came from an Algonquian term from the Powhatan language in Virginia, which probably meant cloud, although there's some dispute over what it really meant. But it was chosen as a designation partly to replace Ultima Thule, which astronomers had been calling this object, but then were embarrassed because they found out that that term had been used by the original Nazis, as well as some other white supremacist groups. And so they came up with a separate designation from a extinct Native American language for it. Finally, last year, spontaneously, the ANS voters decided to choose a name of the decade. What was chosen as the name of the decade to go along with ADS's word of the decade was Brexit, which was, again, the designation for the vote for the United Kingdom leaving the European Union, something which I think was just finally completely accomplished this year after several years after the vote, and partly chosen because it became an inspiration for many other similar names. I don't think any of the movements named after Brexit have themselves succeeded, but for instance, people who would like California to leave the United States called their movement Colexit. People who would like Texas to leave the United States call it Texit, et cetera, and so forth. So that is the designation for the history of the name of the year. And I hope you all enjoyed that. And now I would be happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, there's Cleve. All right. We do have a few minutes for some questions before we get to the 2020 Name of the Year discussion. So if anybody has a question, you can put it in the chat or you can use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the page. Thank you so much for that, Cleve. Everybody in the chat is just like freaking out because your memory is so amazing that not only do you remember these things, but you remember why we did it and how the votes went.
I did have all of my own yearly reports that I had to write for the journal on this to look at while I was preparing that. So I didn't have to spontaneously remember everything,
Oh boy. Well, still an amazing job summarizing it all. And I think the folks who have been members of the ANS all remember a lot of those discussions and the votes that we had, and how interesting it is when there are suggestions, spontaneous suggestions from the floor for names that hadn't been considered before, which then sometimes rise to the top that you weren't expecting to see.